Of all Force sensitives in the lore, we believe that Asajj Ventress is one that flies under the radar way too often. From the moment she showed up, she remained a present and a tangible threat to all of our heroes. But with all who serve the Sith, you don't want to be too good at your job. Otherwise, you could find yourself getting disposed of. And this is exactly what happened to Ventress when she ended up in Sidious's crosshairs. Years of serving Dooku made her an exceptionally skilled assassin. But Sidious wasn't as concerned with their skills as she was with their rapidly growing power. And I definitely do not think it should be understated how significant it was that he believed that she was a real viable threat. In today's Holocron, we're going to pay Ventress some respect by talking about exactly what it was that made Palpatine so wary of her. Welcome back to the Archives, lore junkies. Let us begin. It's worth mentioning that even though Dooku had well over a dozen dark side acolytes, Asajj Ventress was the best of them. Multiple times she's been labeled as Dooku's most dangerous assassin, and it is for very good reason. Despite how hard he was on her, Asajj gave Dooku the most pride out of all of the acolytes that he trained. She took to each of his lessons, correcting every minor detail about her form and her philosophy. Rarely did Dooku ever compliment her without having a criticism right behind it. But just to himself, Dooku believed that she was by far his most effective agent, the only one he could trust to get a difficult job done. Grievous was strong, but often only good as a mad attack dog. Dirge had his uses, but was too indelicate for certain operations. But Ventress was ruthless, tenacious, and cunning. As accurate as a sniper, but as powerful as a missile. Her goals were not often simply to please Dooku, but to grow ever closer to advancing her position as his apprentice. Since the day the two of them met, Ventress made clear her intentions to be a Sith. In fact, she would even present herself as one to Dooku. But of course, he simply laughed at her and showed her the true power of the dark side. After experiencing his powers for herself, she realized the significant gap between where she was and where she desired to be. Then she would learn that Dooku himself had a master, one far greater than he was. Upon meeting Sidious over a hologram, she recognized how high the bar could truly be. And so she submitted herself to Dooku's teachings. She bided her time well, learning what Dooku threw her way as scraps of knowledge. But the whole time she was well aware that she was simply eating scraps dropped under the table. There was a wealth of knowledge just beyond her reach, and she intended one day to seize it. Over the course of the Clone Wars, Dooku's pride in her swelled, but he knew also that she was beginning to contemplate the path to becoming a true Sith Lord. This is told to us in the magazine Star Wars Fact File number 67. In that same fact file, we learned that Sidious was also becoming concerned about Ventress. Her power was growing all the time, and he believed that combined both Ventress and Dooku would be strong enough to pose a viable threat. Sidious would present himself to Tyrannus unannounced, and even accuse him of raising his own Sith apprentice in the shadows to betray him. But to prove his loyalty, Sidious instructed Dooku to eliminate Ventress. Dooku swore up and down that this was not the case, but to prove his loyalty, Sidious instructed Dooku to eliminate Ventress. Tyrannus balked at this command, and for the first time, he openly questioned his master. He argued that she was his most trusted agent and most effective to the Sith cause. Angered, Sidious doubled down and demanded that he kill her at once. Dooku reluctantly agreed, having no choice or ability to bargain for Ventress's life. During this time, she had been presently engaged in a space battle with the Republic and had crashed into a capital ship's main hangar. When she called out to her master for evacuation, her request was denied and Dooku coldly left her there to die. This moment is truly fascinating to us because of several reasons. First and foremost, Dooku was ready to go to bat for Ventress, going so far as to question Sidious to his face. Then, he didn't even have it in him to kill her with his own hand. He could have easily helped her out of the battle and recalled her to Sereno. There, it would have barely been an inconvenience for him to catch her by surprise and run her through with his lightsaber. But instead, Dooku simply left her alone in a losing battle. Based on the way that he had trained her, he should have known that she would have easily survived this. This execution attempt was pretty non-committal in our opinion. And while he never intended to team up with her again, this could imply that he was hoping that she could survive. But the most important facet is Sidious's opinion of Ventress and his command of her death. We have discussed before how powerful Dooku is presently. He was fairly close to Sidious considering he was able to contend pretty well with Grandmaster Yoda, but he lacked a small push that would truly make him even. From Sidious's perspective, the small boost would have been Asajj Ventress. Sidious is many things, and among those things is a man who both respects power and has a problem with underestimation. Sidious is notorious for underestimating his enemies and anyone he perceives as being weaker than he is, which is most people. However, as a Sith Lord, he is forced to respect power in whatever capacity that it comes in. He may see someone who is presently weak, but is aware that their future potential makes them a great threat. But Palpatine's swiftness in commanding Ventress's death may betray a deeper truth. He didn't just fear her future power, but her current power as well. It's no secret that Palpatine fears the Nightsisters and especially Mother Talzin. Although he believed their philosophies are misguided, he states that their power is to be commended and to be carefully watched. Talzin's problem was that she had no ambition to take the Nightsisters beyond Dathomir. The lack of ambition was the reason Sidious originally skipped over her when considering an apprentice. However, he remained of the belief that if the Nightsisters were to ever gain greater prospects, they would be a substantial threat to even the Sith. This is why he allowed Grievous to totally wipe out their clan, and in Legends continuity when the Empire rose, he would position a fleet to quarantine Dathomir and contain the remaining witches. As we'll go into deeper in this video, their powers and natural talents in the Force concerned Sidious greatly. But as for how it pertains to Ventress, all it required is a quick look at her feats to see why Sidious wanted her dead. Ventress was stated to be more than a match for any one Jedi. Ahsoka Tano believed it was a death mission for any less than 2 Jedi to engage her. General Obi-Wan Kenobi believed that she was more experienced in the Force than most Jedi Knights. This definitely comes as a shock since she was only trained to a Padawan level in her youth. She then fought as a gladiator for many years, only to have her training completed by none other than Dooku. Ventress was still actively in training during the Clone Wars, which is why she progressed so steadily right alongside Anakin. Yet despite her limited knowledge of the Force, Kenobi still believed that she had a better grasp on it than even their own experienced knights. At one point, Obi-Wan would even tell her that had she not gone down the dark side, she would have been one of the finest Jedi to ever live, one of the Order's brightest lights. But as it stands, all her potential was turned towards evil and a vengeful hatred for the Jedi. This is reflected in the tenacity with which she does combat with the Jedi. Physically, she was extremely powerful, able to manhandle creatures twice her size. She also shows incredible willpower and resiliency, able to tank hits from Anakin Skywalker and survive long falls that should have resulted in her death. Twice Anakin would drop her from a great height. One of those times she was bound together with electrified cables, and yet both times she escaped and returned. But what I would argue is most impressive about Ventress is her speed and how she utilizes it. She repeatedly proves to be fast enough to outpace other Force wielders, to the point where they are unable to register her movements. On one occasion, she blitzed a Jedi Master by the name of Jarish Jet, causing him to lose track of her before she immediately killed him. This had been a pretty powerful Jedi Master who had previously shown to summon a Force storm. This kind of potency is usually only seen in Sith Lords. Oftentimes, potency in the Force and output directly translates to the user's physical prowess and cognitive functions, and Ventress was able to put him down. In more than one instance, she moved faster than Quinlan Vos could register, swinging her lightsaber before he could react. This actually resulted in her outdueling and killing his master, Thulm, in Star Wars canon. In Legends, she was fast enough to keep up with Obi-Wan Kenobi and Kit Fisto, both of whom are generally regarded as some of the fastest Jedi in the Order, behind of course Yoda. In fact, Obi-Wan is literally known for his speed, which is the reason he managed to take down Grievous. But towards the end of the war, an experienced Obi-Wan dueled Ventress in the Dark Disciple novel. Ventress was enraged at the time, and Obi-Wan is described as having difficulty parrying her attacks. This perfectly brings us to her many dueling feats. Upon first seeing her in action, Sidious complimented her skills with the lightsaber as being impressive. This is a rare accolade and a compliment to be given, as Sidious does not place much stock in lightsaber skills in general, as he relies predominantly on the Force. It usually took a lot longer for him to acknowledge someone's prowess. Among the few that he did were Dooku, Windu, Vader, and Darth Maul. Ventress constantly fought against Anakin and Obi-Wan together, and in both Legends and canon, the two of them were virtually unstoppable working as a duo. Anakin's raw power and perfection over the attack form Gem So had perfect marriage with Obi-Wan's speed and perfection over the defensive Sarisu. They covered each other's blind spots instinctively and bolstered one another's strengths. It took Dooku himself to actually undermine and destabilize their unity. But on Obadiah, even Dooku started to falter, having difficulty towards the end when Anakin and Kenobi began to switch up their form. And of course in Legends, the two of them outsmarted Dooku on the invisible hand, and nearly took him out. And although Ventress was not able to dominate them the way that her master did, she was still able to contend with them long enough to escape. And when dueling them individually, she was almost able to go the distance and even put them on the ropes. In Legends, she is the one who administers Anakin's scar. She did this to prove that she could take his head off anytime she wanted. Obi-Wan usually finds himself being driven back by her cunning attacks, and she has nearly broken his perfect defense on multiple occasions. At one point, she duels against 3 Jedi at once. 2 of them were knights, and the third was Jedi Master Kakruk. She manages to defeat them all and nearly executes Kakruk before Windu steps in. They clash blades once, but Ventress personally admits that she is no match for Windu and flees. But Windu consistently believed that Ventress remained a threat to all Jedi, and didn't hesitate to engage her when he could. Windu's belief is proven by the fact that Ventress has contended with many prominent members of the Order. Ventress has defeated Kit Fisto, injured Luminara unduly while fighting with both her and Ahsoka, and even managed to injure Plo Koon. When amped by the Darkseid Nexus on Dathomir, Ventress fought with and defeated Canon Grievous. At one point in the comics, she even dueled Legends General Grievous, and though he dominated her most of the duel, she still landed a solid hit on his back, drove him back quite a bit, and force pushed him through an aquarium. She would also fight against Savage and Maul with Obi-Wan, managing to land a clean kick on Maul. However, Ventress admitted that she was out of her depth and was forced to escape with Kenobi. But in our opinion, if Ventress's dueling limits are Mace Windu and Darth Maul, then those are extremely high limits. But like we said earlier, combat feats are one thing, but it takes much more than that for Sidious to get uncomfortable. One must prove to have a problematic degree of force abilities, and Ventress has only a few force-related feats, most of them being telekinetic. But luckily for us, that ability is reliable as a measuring rod for revealing a Force Sensitive's current power and future potential. She was able to cause an avalanche on one mission. This is a feat similar to Plo Koon when he used it to collapse a cave. When fighting the 3 Jedi we mentioned earlier, she was able to blast all of them back together with a single push. Her force pushes have also dominated both Anakin and Obi-Wan, both separately and together. She's flung Kenobi through solid walls, repeatedly shoved Anakin, and at one point even pinned Skywalker to a wall with her telekinesis, a feat that requires total force domination. She was also able to force push Dooku against his desk. Of course, it should be noted that Anakin had a problem with subconsciously holding back when he was a Jedi, and Dooku was drugged when Ventress attacked him. But nonetheless, both of these are still impressive feats. After her loss on Yavin 4, Ventress learned to work around Anakin's incredible raw power, and at one point she was shown to quickly recover from one of his pushes, landing safely on her feet only a few meters away. Her defense against other Force wielders extends to her abilities in concealment. Just like Darth Maul, her abilities in Force stealth are nearly unparalleled. She used a system of techniques that Obi-Wan identified as the Quay Tech Meditations, and with them she was able to mask her presence in the Force so well that not even Windu could sense her. But what we believe gave Darth Sidious the most cause of alarm was her access to magic. She had not spent much time with the Nightsisters prior to Dooku's betrayal, but even then she somehow had a grasp on their ways and could use a handful of their spells. One of which was the ability to track anyone anywhere in the galaxy with only a single drop of their blood. But the one that likely got Sidious's attention was her ability to raise the dead. On Naboo's moon of Oma-Dun, she and Dirge unleashed a chemical weapon that killed all of the Gungans there. When Republic forces arrived, she engaged Kenobi and the Jedi Strike Team in combat. She would then casually raise the corpses of several Gungan warriors off of the ground, reanimating them and sending them directly into combat. The Sith had been able to do this as well, but it was a spell dating all the way back to the ancient Sith Kings, those who predated the current Sith Lords and the lineage of the Rule of Two. Sorzis Sin was one of the founding members of the Sith Order, and regarded the ability to raise the dead as incredibly complex. This usually meant that if one were raising a private army, it would require a Sith sorcerer to conduct an elaborate ritual. But on the moon, Ventress did so with a single gesture. Darth Sidious was noted as being greatly curious about the Nightsisters' powers. He even somewhat feared their magic because it was able to replicate the Sith arts and even go beyond them in some cases. Sidious didn't understand their magic because it was such a close-guarded secret. Even though it bore resemblances of Sith sorcery, it was different enough to perturb him, especially since the Nightsisters displayed abilities that Sith did not have. Sidious annotates Mother Talzin's chapter named Wild Power. In it, she begins to talk about talismans and totems that their witches have created. Here Sidious writes this: "These are not so different from Sith amulets, despite what the Dathamiris preach. Yet none of these abilities have yet been duplicated by a Sith alchemist to my knowledge. Curious." Sidious was already interested and somewhat concerned about the powers of a trained Nightsister. But here was Ventress, a presumably untrained one, raising the dead like it was nothing, a feat only replicated by the strongest lords of the ancient empires. So of course Sidious is going to believe that Ventress was a problem. A dark acolyte, a mere tool for the Sith, should not be slinging powers that are privy only to the deepest of Sith lore. This, coupled with her growing potency and combat accolades, made Sidious believe that she and Dooku were enough to topple him, the same way that Vader and Starkiller would attempt to do later. So Ventress had to go. I definitely think that this was kind of a waste on Sidious's part. Sure, Ventress was a threat, but she was still incredibly useful. We might even say that he should have just taken her as a new apprentice, or a beginning of the Emperor's hands. Later, Sidious states that the only reason he never took Ventress as a real apprentice was because she was too blinded by her hatred for the Jedi. This would keep her from aspiring for a greater vision of the galaxy beyond them. So once again, the old Nightsister conundrum plagues Sidious. They're extremely powerful to the point of being problematic. But to him, they lack any meaningful ambitions to make them useful or real Sith. The only answer is to contain or to eliminate them before someone else uses them first. They uniquely are darkside wielders perfectly suited to combat the Sith. They're dangerous, unpredictable, and as Sidious puts it, wields wild power. But now, what do you think? Do you believe that getting rid of Ventress was a big mistake? And did you know that she was this powerful? Or do you think that Sidious was just being paranoid? In this video, we decided to use her feats from both Legends and canon in order to paint the broadest picture possible. So tell us what you think of this holocron in the comments down below. If you would like more character ability breakdowns, then be sure to recommend some below as well. Until next time, thank you for joining me in the archives today, and may the Force be with you.